Free agency can be an exciting time, but when you have high hopes for new players being brought in and then they grossly underperform, they wind up being in videos like this. From overpaying and overpromising to players who were once all-stars but have since fallen off, in this video we're going to be taking a look at the worst free agent signings for all 32 teams. The Anaheim Ducks, Todd Bertuzzi. Todd Bertuzzi was a force over several seasons with the Vancouver Canucks. However, the Anaheim Ducks got the post-Steve Moore suspension version of Todd Bertuzzi. Now, 2 years for $8 million is not a fortune in the league, but Bertuzzi only played 68 games and scored 14 goals in the 2007-2008 season before the Ducks bought out his deal halfway through. The Arizona Coyotes, Mike Ribeiro. Given his status as a point-per-game player with the Washington Capitals, it's not surprising the Coyotes shelled out $22 million for 4 years for Ribeiro. But to say it didn't work out is an understatement. He tallied only 47 points in 80 games played and was bought out after 1 season, with former GM Don Maloney saying Mike Ribeiro had real behavioral issues during his time with the franchise. The Boston Bruins, David Backes. Now we have to say that Backes reached 30 goals twice and 20 goals 4 times during his time with the St. Louis Blues, which led to the Boston Bruins giving him $30 million over 5 seasons. Unfortunately for Backes and the Bruins, his production fizzled, and the Bruins then dealt him to the Anaheim Ducks after scoring just 39 goals in 3+ seasons. The Buffalo Sabres, Ville Leino. The summer of 2011 was a challenging one in Buffalo. Just a day after the Sabres dumped a $40 million contract on Christian Ehrhoff, they then dished out 6 years and $27 million to Leino, a 27-year-old winger with 30 NHL goals. Fast forward to 3 years later, he added just 10 more to that total and was bought out halfway through the deal. The Calgary Flames, Dennis Wideman. Dennis Wideman was a serviceable enough defenseman who played parts of 7 seasons with 4 NHL teams, but with that being said, he was definitely not worth 5 years and $26.25 million. That is what the Calgary Flames offered him. During his time there, Dennis Wideman surpassed 22 points just once, and once his contract was over after the 2016-2017 season, Dennis Wideman retired. The Carolina Hurricanes, Jani Pikkanen. Jani Pikkanen was one of the league's top young defensemen with the Philadelphia Flyers, and the Carolina Hurricanes were hoping he'd reclaim that status after he had a lost season with the Edmonton Oilers. But the 3-year $12 million deal and then a 3-year $13.5 million extension looks really bad in retrospect after he reached 40 points just once during his time there. The Chicago Blackhawks, Brent Seabrook. Winning the Stanley Cup is what every NHL player wants, and when it happens, it certainly ups the value of that player. Brent Seabrook was one of those players at the age of 30 who got an 8-year, $55 million contract in the afterglow of capturing 3 Stanley Cups. After signing this contract, Brent Seabrook's performance fell short, which is obvious to say considering he was playing in his 30s, and then Chicago shipped him out after the 2020-21 season. The Colorado Avalanche, Brad May. Now there are a few factors that make this an ugly one for the Avalanche. Brad May wasn't at all a productive player for the Avalanche, but even worse, he was one of the triggers of the Steve Moore incident while he played in Vancouver. Brad May only scored a measly 3 goals in 64 games played before he was traded to Anaheim in the 2006-2007 season. The Columbus Blue Jackets, Nathan Horton. After 9 straight seasons with double-digit goals, including a peak output of 31, the Blue Jackets went all in on the 28-year-old power forward to the tune of 7 years and $37.1 million. Now obviously because he is in this video, this deal was a bust. Thanks to injuries, Nathan Horton played just 36 games and scored 5 goals before a trade to Toronto in 2015. The Dallas Stars, Antti Niemi. Antti Niemi certainly arrived to the Lone Star State with plenty of goaltending street cred. He was a cup champion in Chicago and a 30-plus game winner 4 times with the San Jose Sharks before getting a 3-year $13.5 million offer from the Dallas Stars. However, by the end of year 2, he was just their backup goalie and ended up getting bought out. The Detroit Red Wings, Stephen Weiss. Now you might have forgotten that Stephen Weiss was a pretty effective NHL center, scoring double-digit goals 7 times and reaching 60 points twice with the Florida Panthers. However, the 5-year, $24.5 million deal he got from the Red Wings was something Detroit fans wish never happened. Stephen Weiss played 78 games in 2 years before he was bought out from this contract. The Edmonton Oilers, Sheldon Surrey. If only Sheldon Surrey could have been Chris Pronger. That is surely what the Oilers were still looking for back in 2007 when they inked Sheldon Surrey to a 5-year, $27 million deal. Well, they certainly didn't get Chris Pronger, but what they did get was 1 strong year, 2 injury-riddled years, and a 4th year that got him sent down to the AHL before getting bought out in his final year. The Florida Panthers, Dave Bolland. Dave Bolland is another example of an ex-Blackhawk who won Stanley Cups and got paid because of it. Bolland went from Chicago to Toronto, but then struck gold with the Florida Panthers in 2014 when they handed him $27.5 million over 5 seasons. He scored just 6 goals in his first season and 1 goal over 25 games in his second due to injuries. Unfortunately, that was the last season Dave Bolland ever played. The LA Kings, Simon Gagne. Simon Gagne was a productive winger with the Philadelphia Flyers, but at the time of this contract with the LA Kings, his performance had already fallen. The LA Kings gave him 2 years at $7 million after he spent the 2010-2011 season with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Gagne had 17 points with the LA Kings in 2011-2012, then played just 11 games with the Kings the following season before being traded back to Philly. The Minnesota Wild, Zach Parise and Ryan Suter. You can't really separate the matching 13-year, $99 million deals the Wild gave out to both Parise and Suter on July 4th of 2012. Zach Parise remained a relatively consistent scorer, and Suter was a credible presence on the blue line. However, both were bought out of this insane contract 9 years later on July 13th, 2021. The Montreal Canadiens, Carl Alzner. The 6'3", 219-pound Carl Alzner was one of the NHL's most durable defensemen during a prolonged stint with the Washington Capitals, but by the time he got to Montreal, that certainly fizzled out. He played 1 full season of 82 games with the Canadiens after getting 5 years and $23.125 million, but was eventually bought out by 2020. The Nashville Predators, Nick Bonino. One day, Bonino was helping the Pittsburgh Penguins to a Stanley Cup win over the Predators, and then a few days later, he was signed by Nashville for 4 years and $16.4 million with hopes that he would bring an elite level to their locker room. Instead, Nick Bonino only scored 3 goals in 20 playoff games over 3 seasons before he was traded away. The New Jersey Devils, Ilya Kovalchuk. This free agent signing certainly brought a ton of unwanted drama to New Jersey. The Devils got in on Kovalchuk thanks to a trade with the Atlanta Thrashers, but they did have to compete to retain his services when he became a free agent after the 2009-2010 season. The Devils got Kovalchuk for 17 years and $102 million, but the NHL had to step in and nix that deal until it was reworked to 15 years, $100 million. Anyways, none of that matters because Kovalchuk only lasted 3 more seasons and then went off to the KHL. The New York Islanders, Andrew Ladd. The Islanders are certainly the victim here as they paid big money, hoping that Andrew Ladd would replicate his successes for the Islanders. Ladd had scored 20-plus goals in 5 of 6 seasons before getting $38.5 million over 7 seasons for the New York Islanders. Unfortunately, he only reached that number once for the Islanders and then was sent to the desert to play with Arizona. The New York Rangers, Brad Richards. Now, Brad Richards was certainly not a bad player for the New York Rangers. He put up 151 points through 3 seasons, but the fact of the matter is, this was a terrible contract. Brad Richards was on a 9-year, $60 million contract, and at that price point, he was considered to be underperforming on a big stage. The Rangers bought him out just days after a run to the 2014 Stanley Cup Finals. The Ottawa Senators, Alexei Kovalev. Alexei Kovalev had been a prolific goal scorer with 3 NHL teams by the time the Senators signed him to a 2-year, $10 million deal. Now, he was at the age of 36, so the magic was all but gone at this point in his career. He scored 32 goals in 132 games and was sent back to Pittsburgh in year 2 of this contract, and following his time with the Penguins, he decided to head back to play in Russia. The Philadelphia Flyers, Ilya Bryzgalov. There was a long stretch of time there where the Flyers' goaltending was in rough shape. The Flyers had high hopes when they signed Ilya Bryzgalov. He was coming off a solid run with the Phoenix Coyotes, so the Flyers offered him $51 million over 9 years. However, by the end of his first 2 seasons there, the Flyers were quick to buy out the remaining 7 years. The Pittsburgh Penguins, Rob Scuderi. Rob Scuderi was a rugged defenseman who had 2 stints with the Penguins, and one of them was much more successful than the other. In between both stints, he went to LA for 2 years, but when the Pittsburgh Penguins got him back, they signed him for 4 years at $13.5 million. He just put up 18 points in 2.5 seasons before being shipped out to Chicago. The San Jose Sharks, Mikhail Bodker. At the time, he was 26 years old and showed all the signs of an emerging NHL talent when the Sharks got him to agree to a 4-year, $16 million deal. Now, instead of flourishing, Mikhail Bodker was in a downward spiral. He only had 25 goals in 155 games before he was dumped to the Ottawa Senators in a multi-year deal in 2018. After that deal was done, he went on to score only 4 more goals. The Seattle Kraken, Jaden Schwartz. Now, the Kraken are obviously new to the league, and they have plenty of terrible deals ahead of them. However, the worst free agent signing to date is Jaden Schwartz. The Kraken shelled out $25.5 million over 5 seasons to a 29-year-old Jaden Schwartz who has a history filled with injuries. He'll be 34 years old when the deal wraps up in 2026, and I'm curious to see if he'll get bought out or dealt before that happens. The St. Louis Blues, Jay McKee. During his time in the NHL, Jay McKee was certainly a solid and capable NHL defenseman, playing with the Buffalo Sabres through his first 8 seasons. After his time in Buffalo concluded, the St. Louis Blues overpaid for him, plain and simple. They gave him a 4-year, $16 million deal. 3 years into this deal, the Blues were not happy, sending McKee packing to the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Tampa Bay Lightning, Vincent Lecavalier. Now, obviously, if you go to a Lightning game these days, you'll certainly see a wave of Lecavalier number 4 jerseys. The fact that he led a cup-winning team in 2004 means he will forever be a hero to the Lightning fans. However, with that being said, 11 years at $85 million a few years after they won the cup is a terrible decision. During the first 4 years of this new contract, things didn't really work out for Tampa or Lecavalier, resulting in them buying out the contract. The Toronto Maple Leafs, David Clarkson. David Clarkson had worked himself into an important role with the New Jersey Devils by the end of the 2012-2013 season. That is when the Maple Leafs made a stupid decision. They made Clarkson a 7-year, $36.75 million offer, but quickly regretted it. Clarkson only lasted less than 2 seasons before being traded to the Columbus Blue Jackets. The Vancouver Canucks, Louis Eriksson. Louis Eriksson picked a lucrative time to score 30 goals. He maxed out his production in the 2015-2016 season with the Boston Bruins, just in time to sucker the Canucks into a 6-year, $36 million contract. Louis Eriksson scored just 38 goals across his first 5 years of the deal before he was dumped in the desert for the Arizona Coyotes. The Vegas Golden Knights, Vadim Shipachyov. Now, this one is certainly a unique situation. Like the Seattle Kraken, the Vegas Golden Knights have only been around for a few years. And although they've made a few questionable moves, signing Shipachyov was the worst of the worst. He only played exactly 3 games in the NHL. He signed a 2-year deal worth $9 million before he decided the NHL wasn't for him and made his way back to the KHL. The Washington Capitals, Michael Nylander. At the time of this deal, Michael Nylander was 34 years old and has certainly made his rounds in the NHL. Nylander played for the Hartford Whalers and for 5 other teams, and this was his second stint with the Capitals. Returning to Washington in 2007, they offered him a 4-year, $16.5 million contract. Unfortunately, Nylander only spent 2 years of that contract in the NHL and the last 2 playing in the AHL. The Winnipeg Jets, Olli Jokinen. At the time of signing this contract, Olli Jokinen was 33 years old and was trending well after a 23-goal season with the Calgary Flames in the 2011-2012 season. That performance prompted the Jets to dangle a 2-year, $9 million deal right in the face of Olli Jokinen. He, of course, happily signed it and went on to score just 7 goals in year 1 and then 18 in year 2, which, needless to say, was well short of the Jets' expectations. Thanks for watching our videos. Don't forget to leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button.